Excellent. Well, just let us switch places and put the PowerPoint up, and then we'll get
Can we
started.
take 5?
Yeah, really, 4.
Okay.
4 minutes. Yep. We'll be back at 11:25.
Good job. Wow, I'm sorry.
Well, I don't think Scott's here, correct?
No,
He's got COVID. I'm going to go straight to you, Bob, for the background and overview.
yeah, and I'm going to stall because I don't think the PowerPoint is quite keyed up
Okay.
here, but I can find a way to babble a few words.
Yeah, go ahead.
As we think about managing the jail, the one thing I want to start with is how difficult a job this is for the men and women that work there. It's always important just to remember that 8 hours a day, sometimes 10, sometimes 12, our employees are taking care of 50-plus people accused of murder and more serious crimes, not to mention a huge number of mentally ill persons who really shouldn't be in our facility, but as you know, the legislature allowed a change in the law so that the hospitals don't have to take the individuals as fast as the law technically says. So this is an extremely difficult job. I've said several times publicly and in front of our troops, I couldn't do it. I could not spend my entire life taking care, and really it is taking care. This isn't, this is America, this is Minnesota. We do our great job of treating inmates with due care and making sure their health is well, their safety. And I tell people on a regular basis, I try to imagine that it's a relative of mine that's in that jail, and I want to make sure that they're safe all the time. And so, we do have a great track record of safety inside our facility. 2 weeks ago, our deputies rescued another person from an attempted suicide from second floor. We've been installing those barriers to catch people, but not every pod has that. So just praise to our employees who have been doing this for some time now. And, I like I said, just very thankful for the people that we have. And we need to always be thinking about how we can recruit people into this venue. So I know we're a little short on time. Kyle has a PowerPoint that he's going to run by to talk about the jail and capacity, et cetera. But at the conclusion of this, as you know, we have put together a plan with Alex and Ryan to try to address some of the DOC issues in terms of staffing. It's a money-neutral plan in that, thankfully, you approved some additional funding for next year's budget. We've suggested using a portion of that money and money dedicated for temporaries and intermittents to package up to hire 12 employees. And so there's no additional cost. The win-win-win is that personnel, human resources really doesn't love the temporary employees, and it takes us a while every 6 months to argue about, who are the next ones going to be. And so in a way, we've capitulated and said, okay, let's not use temporary employees, although there are some benefits. We'll just make them all full-time. And we'll package together a portion of the money that you gave us for next year so that we can address the staffing issues. And really, the staffing issues really are about wellness checks. You saw Anoka County lost another inmate. It will be determined how often they checked on the inmate at some point, but regular 30-minute wellness checks to make sure someone's breathing and is a critical part of what we do. And you can never have quite enough staff to make sure that gets done. So I think that item is for discussion today, but before you officially next Tuesday, correct, Ryan?
Correct.
I think so. And with that in mind, as an overview, I'll turn it over to Kyle Meestead. Bill Finney, who supervises the jail, is here as well as the chief deputy. And I know you're in a little rush, so I've told Kyle just to fly through this 2-hour presentation. And
Talk slow and be brief, right, Sheriff?
yeah, talk slow.
Yeah, excuse me, Kyle. Several commissioners have meetings. We're going to 12. And
Okay.
I'm going to keep everybody on task, and I'm going to shut you down after or move you along, just so you know.
In
I
light
mean,
of that,
as-
do we
as
think
we
it
go.
might be more advantageous to focus on the staffing component and the phone calling?
I think if you begin with that, because we
Okay.
have the RBA next Tuesday
Yep.
for us to vote on, and the main purpose of this is to have information provided to the board so we feel comfortable with next week's vote.
Okay.
And then we could come back to talk about the other issues.
Plus, you have the copy of the PowerPoint and all the
Yeah.
information contained in there. So maybe not, because when we originally conceived this, it was more for a broader picture.
Yes,
But
I
now we're
know.
sort of focused.
Yeah, so I think, Chair, Commissioners, I think we can jump ahead and,
Is she gonna jump ahead for you?
yep, I've got the remote here, so I think. I think we'll jump to the proposed complement increase, then phone calling, and we can go back to staffing, training, some of those other questions if that remains. So, what we have before the board next Tuesday is a proposed complement increase to address some long-term needs in the areas of well-being checks, programming, and a relief factor. And so this would be about slide 18.
Page 20 in your slides. Okay.
And so we were able to work with Finance, Scott Williams, HR, and company to put together a plan that would allow for the strategic reallocation of temporary and intermittent salaries to full-time dollars, as well as a portion of our unallocated levy increase to finance those costs. And so we can increase the complement in the jail, we can provide much-needed staffing, and we can do so with no net impact to the levy. And as the sheriff touched on a little bit with the Department of Corrections, there is, facilities in general, whether it's here or Anoka or other counties, have issues or troubles when staffing levels fall below minimums and when well-being checks aren't being completed. And so the complement increase on the left side of the slide talks about the advantages for health and safety. It'll reduce the need to house folks out of county at a high cost. Help us gain better compliance with well-being checks, allow for more direct services programming. Also the belief that we can reduce overtime costs associated with filling the mandated post positions. And again, the context leading up to this probably might be a little more helpful. But with the relief factor, that will have a significant impact on staffing as well. And we can also continue the trajectory that Under Sheriff Finney has been working on in terms of building a more reflective diverse workforce. Especially in the jail ranks, especially for gender too is a significant piece because, we have to staff the jail accordingly by gender as well, for obvious reasons. And then the financing table on the side talks about the total cost in 2024 and 2025, the decrease or transfer of existing funds, then down to the allocation of the additional levy to make that net neutral. And again, that's on the agenda for next Tuesday. Questions at the end, I'm guessing, or
questions?
phone calling, because I know we're
That was way fast.
too fast.
Victoria?
Actually, I do have a question on the proposed complement. It's our understanding that there have been several employees in the sheriff's office who've been temporary and provisional beyond the 6 months that's permitted by state law and the personnel rules. And so I am wondering if you can tell us whether or not the requested 12 FTEs will end the practice of keeping the temps and provisionals beyond the permitted by state law.
Yes.
Okay.
Nicole?
Well, first I want to thank you for the work. You didn't cover it all. I read through the PowerPoint though and other notes. So you guys have done a lot of work with our staff to come up with a solution that does really feel like a win-win, and I really appreciate that. I think that's something we've talked about for a long time, is like, if we can see what's going on, then that helps us figure out what you need budget-wise. So I really appreciate that. I do have a question about just folks. My understanding, like as we've been going through this process and getting updates, that there are folks who are like working out of class for an extended period of time. How are you managing the impacts of that on your budget?
Well, there are not a lot of people working out of class, but if a sergeant is sick or on leave or goes away for military leave, we still have to have a supervisor in that position, so we will make a person an acting sergeant. It's a pretty common procedure to be an acting sergeant. The personnel position on this that is that even acting shouldn't be actings longer than 6 months, a year with their permission. But usually these actings are much shorter than that, but then say you have another vacancy 6 months later, they might take a new acting position. So most of our out-of-titles are actings to serve for vacancies. Having said that, we do have a few extra lieutenants that are there that we're analyzing whether we need. We're having one retire that's going to
Catholic Charities.
Charities, so that'll bring us back down. We've had this conversation before, but there's nothing more important than good supervision in a jail facility. And probably the right thing for me to do is to bring a board action asking to add some lieutenants officially and make it a money neutral impact. But, you know, I'm sure someone would say, well, that is going to cost more money. And so we've been hesitant to do that, you know, to bring it forward. But in reality, we probably should bring an amendment that says we need this amount of supervision in the jail in order to do it right. So it's a consequence of not bringing that. We have had some acting lieutenants for a little longer, and we're working with personnel negotiating on how long that will continue. And I'm guessing that personnel will win and will probably curtail some of those actings. So,
No, thank you. I appreciate that, and I think it gets just to this idea of transparency so
Yeah.
that we know where money's going. And
Yeah.
I mean, a relief factor makes total sense to me. That's something that happens. You've got a 24/7 operation. You've got people who are going to be out. You need to have a way to fill those holes, and that might have a supervisory component as well. So it's just, I'd love to see and
well,
dig down
I
into
do
that.
want to say that I take that part of the job very seriously, Commissioner, in terms of providing a safe environment. And if that takes a little extra supervision, you know, I'm going to err on the side of having that. But Commissioner Reinhardt, this question is slightly different from your question. Your question was about temporary employees that were there. This is about actings, which is there's two different.
Yeah, this was a.
I saw her looking over her like she was not sure if I was.
Okay, Trista.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up to Nicole's question, which I totally understand. You have to, if the supervisor's out, someone's going to be acting. But if they're there for 6 months or 12 months, are they, you know, that's a long time. So are they being trained as supervisors? How are you selecting them so that if that position becomes permanent, that they're in, right? It's a little bit like frocking someone and, right?
Well, it's a good question. How do I select them? I leave that up to Bill
Okay.
to determine who the supervisors are and the commanders are. He's done a great job, and I've allowed him to manage the facility for the last 3.5 years, and so it's been his call. But he does come to me and say, hey, I need some extra staff or supervision in this area, and I've definitely approved when he adds to that complement of supervisors. The question of does that become, in essence, permanent? That's a good question. No, the answer is no, but on occasion, a union might say, hey, we don't think you should have actings as long as you are, and then we negotiate. But for the most part, the unions have not objected to this practice because it means that one of their employees is actually making more money. Now, I do think it's a fair question, and we have to come back to you, maybe even before Ryan goes, and bring this issue of what's the appropriate number, the complement for supervisors in the jail. Yeah.
So if they're, I just want to make sure I understand. So if they're moved into a supervisory position, even if it's a day or 2 days or 6 months, they're paid at that level, not at their current level. So they're not frocked. They're actually promoted.
They're paid at a higher level. I don't know the exact terminology, but they become what's called an acting sergeant or an acting lieutenant.
Okay.
Mary Jo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just curious about housing individuals out of county. How many are we housing out of county about?
now anyway? I mean, this is going to reduce that if hopefully
Sure.
eliminate it.
Well, when we received notification from the Department of Corrections that we no longer had to house them after November 30th, you all received a copy of the letter. At that point, we had 50, roughly 50 that were still out. We have been higher during the summer months. So what I directed at that time is that we'd bring the places that have one or two, because we did have some counties that have one or two, and the large volume that we really have is at Wright County. And so we still have a chunk at Wright County. I'm uncomfortable bringing those large numbers back until we're able to ramp up our staffing. I don't want to put us back in the situation that got us here in the first place. So this is all a little bit of a timing thing that we are going to bring them back by January 1st, but there will be probably a 2 to 3 week window that we won't have hired the new employees and trained them properly. So we'll have to use some overtime in January to cover that. So that's our plan, is bring back the small numbers now, and by January 1st, bring back all the rest of them from Wright County.
Just on that, am I correct in thinking that it's less expensive to house them ourselves than to pay for them to be housed somewhere else?
You are correct.
Absolutely, right. Okay, so
Lena?
just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Sheriff Fletcher, I read the Department of Correction letter to you, and I was looking at the executive summary that talks about the danger of understaffing in correctional and detention facility, understaffing, what it can lead to, and things like that, and how important it is to have those staff on hand. So my question is, because I've been hearing from there has been persistent rumors of employees who are in the ADC as full-time employees, complements, but don't actually work there. That's the rumors. Is this true? And how can we be assured that the FTEs approved by this board for the ADCs are actually being used as intended?
Yeah. Well, there is no rumor to that. There are a small number of correctional officers that have been signed duties that relate to the operation of the jail that may not physically be in the jail. They might be in an office just outside the main door. As an example, we have two of our correctional officers that, and this is nothing new, this was long before I became sheriff, they've been working in our what's the best term? IT, Kyle? Working in computer support for the jail. The jail has huge computer needs in terms of keeping track of inmates that were there. And to be frank, it's a unique skill and talent. And so we have trained some of our individuals to understand and work our jail management systems. Mm-hmm. And without them, the entire place would crash. Now, would it be great if there were county people and specialists? We do have some county employees there that do a great job on networking, but the actual function of the jail management system requires individuals. So there are two people there. We also have an obligation to maintain a safe facility by monitoring phones. There's 400 individuals there that are making phone calls all the time. And so I do have two correctional officers that work monitoring telephones. I just think that that's an important part for our safety. Is someone trying to smuggle drugs in? We have had, a couple incidences where drugs have been smuggled in and people have passed out and had to be taken to the hospital. So for the safety, the security of the facility, but also for the safety and security of the individuals there, we do have people that monitor phones. And I have one other person that monitors intelligence-based social media stuff to determine if there's something going on in terms of threats internally. There are most of our murders and conflicts end up being rivalries and people wanting to kill each other on a regular basis. If you were in the courthouse here, we had a big fight in the courthouse here between two factions. That one was being sentenced for a murder. We had another one a week later. So we need to know the intel on what's happening to the people in the jail. So there are some bodies, 5 or 6 bodies that are in specialized units. Having said that, I also have 3 deputies working in the jail. And so there's an offset there. If I think that a deputy isn't really up to being on the street for some reason, I will assign them to the jail. And so I have 3 deputies for each an individual reason as to why they aren't really fit for the street that can work in the jail. Sometimes they're not allowed to carry a gun because they might be in the middle of an order for protection or something. Sometimes there might be, another issue that rises that we're not comfortable with them being out in the public. So I think there's a trade-off there, Commissioner Moran, but yeah, there's no rumor. We do use some of our correctional officers in ancillary duties that help serve the jail, but we also use some deputies in the jail as well.
All right, thank you.
Could I do a follow-up on that?
Go ahead, Victoria.
Especially the IT and some of those, is a correctional officer the correct title? I mean, if you're managing, correctional officer seems like the wrong title for what you described. And are there other job titles that are
Could be.
more appropriate? And I guess
Could be, but although that allows us the maximum flexibility, some of these correctional officers might not want to do that their entire life, but they are willing to do it for 5 to 10 years. Just so you know, those positions were in place before I became sheriff this second time. It's been a long-running practice of needing to have the right help.
Oh, I'm not questioning that at all, that you need the people there. I'm just wondering if that's the correct job classification for them, because I don't think of a correctional officer as managing a building.
Yeah.
It's about the interaction with individuals and inmates, and what you described wasn't that. So I guess I'm just asking that maybe it be looked at.
Yeah, well, if you ask me, they deserve like my salary. Because they're the
Well,
smartest
I'm
people
not-
we got. They're the smartest people
Bob,
we
I'm
have.
not arguing with you about that.
Okay, any further?
Mr. Chair, just on this point specifically. So there's work underway, Commissioner Reinhardt. So in the budget just passed, there was some clarity created with the sheriff's office moving forward around IS and where as IS in this organization is consolidated. And what I want to say to that is behind the scenes, there's work going on right now and conversations happening where we talk about what's often called like above the line and below the line for what does IS centrally provide relative to what a department's provide. Now, I'm not here to say whether the current job classification title is correct. That's an important question to work through. But what I do want to give confidence to is that we're in a conversation right now that ensures that going forward, we're going to have greater clarity of roles and responsibilities in a way that helps the sheriff figure out the right job title. It helps the board understand what that job title is relative to the work of information services as well. And I appreciate that. That's actually one of the under the radar things that this budget did that I think is a good thing for all of us sitting around this table.
Thank you. And I guess that's all I'm trying to do is try to understand and make sure that we're on the same page. I'm not arguing about salaries or anything else. I just want to have the best information we have so that it is that we're providing the correct services and the allocations and just making sure that we're doing the best we can
Okay,
in conjunction with the
we
sheriff.
got 10 minutes left. Kyle, you want to continue?
And I know it sounds like we're moving the phone calling conversation to a later meeting.
Yes.
So in terms of,
What would you like from us?
yeah, I guess we
Maybe
can,
we should
Numbers?
talk
I
about.
mean,
the jail population,
Can we do the
I
phone
was
calling?
thinking the jail
let's
population
go
was
to
on my
Okay.
list.
hey, by the
What
way,
about
I want
yours,
to compliment
Krista?
whoever the IT people that actually can, well, he's got his PowerPoint on there, they can have his picture on there. That's a real upgrade, because I get tired of watching those meetings at home where all I can see is the PowerPoint. I want to see the person. There you go.
Okay, so we'll do 2 quick slides on the jail population, and it should display here at some point, but it's no secret that the jail's been overcrowded, and we can talk about why and how and COVID, the court backlog, and so on. But this slide here, it's a lot of data on one slide, but it shows the 2023 jail population through November 28th. The red line at the top represents the total. The gold line represents the number of folks that were housed at the adult detention center under the conditional order from the DOC. And then the blue, I guess that's pretty blue, line represents who was housed out of county. And I think that the biggest message here is when you look at the two dotted green lines, we can see the 2020 average daily population hovered around 240, 250, somewhere in there. In 2022, that population hovered above 400. So the jail population has far exceeded historical averages, which we've kind of talked about periodically throughout the year. Also a problem last year as well with the court backlog, housing a number of folks in custody for, homicide-related charges, the Rule 20 piece. And so then the next slide really helps to highlight some areas of improvement the county has made as a whole. And so this is something that we send to Scott Williams periodically too, but this chart compares the population clusters from November 2023, which is the gold line, to December where we started. And you can see, the folks in custody waiting for sentencing, that's gone up. That means the court's moving faster, cases are getting resolved, which is a good thing. We can see a decrease in the number of individuals waiting for transports to state hospitals. So we've done some work behind the scenes with the Human Services, the Department of Corrections, to help make sure that we're not a mental health facility, but we're moving folks along as best we can. Parole violations are heard by the Department of Corrections Hearing and Release Unit. We can see a decrease there. And again, less people in custody for this particular reason reduces the overall population. That helps with staffing and so on. We did see an uptick in terms of those waiting for probation violation hearings. But again, a point in time measure, it could just, people on vacation, holidays, things slow down a bit. We've got 4 or 5 days off in a row with the holidays, so you'll see the population trend up a little bit around the holidays. Courts is off. We're still working, but they can't get before a judge. I think one of the most notable changes is the individuals waiting for court dates 30 days out. We were at 111 before, down to 76 for this point in time measure. So again, that tells us the court system theoretically should be moving faster. The backlogs are getting resolved. And the same is true for the number of folks in custody waiting for murder, attempted murder, manslaughter, homicide charges. That's been decreasing as the cases are getting before the court and having some degree of resolution.
Thank you. I have a question from Nicole.
Not so much a question, I just wanted to share, because I'm chair of the county courts committee, that we did get at our last county courts committee, the court did say that they have now considered, or the state has considered them, they no longer have a backlog. It's just normal delay at this point. So these numbers really bear it out, and very much appreciated to have it. And I also noticed the Rule 20 evaluation wait has gone down, and I know that's something not only the courts, but the staff on our end have really been working hard to expedite and get folks moving on. So that's great. But I really appreciate having these numbers.
Just to hitchhike on the Rule 20 issue, while the timeline to an evaluation has gone down, there still remains a huge problem statewide on finding beds for mentally ill and incompetent persons and civilly committed. And the person that killed the grocery store owner in Minneapolis was one example of that had been civilly committed. And I won't get into too much detail, but we have several of those types of people that the judges will typically release, or either way, whether they're released on the street to their own means or they're in our facility, it's not the best for them. So anything you can do, I saw Melissa here earlier on the legislative agenda. The legislature created a work group to study that for a period of time, and when that study is completed, we need some progress made.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Trista, then Mary
We
Jo.
hear you loud and clear, and it's a concern. We put it in our legislative agenda to support work of people with acute mental illness, and especially that have been incarcerated or potentially could be. And AMC also put it as a priority. So we're here with you. I just want to share that.
Thank you.
We agree with that.
It's a priority statewide and nationally. I mean, every county in the country is dealing with it. So yes, we're working on it, and thank you for
Thank you.
your support on that. Mr. Chair, I have a question on how are we doing? I'm trying to think if it actually passed yet. We were lobbying at the federal level for the Medicaid, you know, for people to not that were in your jail, but then they went off Medicaid. You know, and then we were paying for them, but they should stay on Medicaid while they're in jail. That maybe hasn't passed yet.
I
So
don't know
how's
the
that
answer
going?
to that. Kyle, do you?
Yeah,
Commissioner, I don't, but I would
Okay.
suspect our
I
correctional
don't
health
think
folks
it's passed yet, right?
might.
Right, so we're working on that one too, because they should stay on the
Right.
federal Medicaid rather than be on county costs on that one. And we're working on that one too at the national level, so just on that. I have one more question. What are the typical ones that you're waiting for a court date 30 or more days out? I mean, I can see where you're in for murder and very serious ones. It's a lot that we were waiting for court date 30 or more. Or was that just because of the backlog?
Well, it was because of the
Yeah.
backlog, but typically it's the serious crimes that the
Yeah.
judges have set a bail that, you know, is a little higher. And, I mean, judges are trying to get every non-serious crime on a low bail or own recognizance quickly as they can.
Okay.
So, and, you know, sometimes maybe it's a mentally ill person that is better off out than in, but really is not going to do well out either. So, you know, that's a tough call for a judge. But, you know, typically it's because of the serious level of crime that we have a court dates out a month.
I don't know, how far are we going on this? Are we going to talk about phones, or what's the next step? Before the sheriff leaves, I have a different question.
Ask your question. We got about 5 minutes.
Okay, first I just want to say, I just want the sheriff, on changing the subject around bail reform, to say personally thank you for your continual support around bail reform. I think your office has been at the table from the beginning, so we really appreciate that. Just, you know, we have a bail reform work group town hall this evening at the Wilder Foundation from 6 to 8, just to update community where we are in this process around bail reform. And I was hoping, I have a question here that I wrote down. Again, thank you. So, you know, as we talk about this town hall and bring this concept around bail reform, we're no longer planning, and now it's going to get into the implementation process, which can be tougher to do or work around. But we definitely need your continual partnership and support of this work at this time as it gets harder, right, to implement, because not everyone will see the value of this. But they've been working a really long time to create a very strategic process that is not so much around, you know, let me read my notes here. So it would be nice for for the rest of the board to hear what most interests or excite you about the work we're doing together. Is it like the community support for people released from jail so that they are more successful, using pre-trial detention as judicially as possible? And the biggest one, I think, is moving towards a more of a risk-based rather than a wealth-based type of process, because right now it's based on wealth. You can kill someone, murder someone, if you have enough money to get out of jail, you go free, right? I mean, you don't go free, but you're out on bail.
We better reform that too.
Right. So it's right more around a risk-based piece, transparency and accountability around who is held in pretrial detention and why. Or is this all above that really excite you about the work that we're doing? And definitely hope to see you this evening.
Well, excitement might be too strong of a
Okay.
word. After being a part of this discussion for 5 years, I've watched this evolve. And we do believe that there are some people that don't need to be in jail that are in jail. All right? But rest assured, we think there are some people that need to be in jail. So should it be risk versus wealth? Absolutely. There's no doubt about that we want to build a system that is able to judge the possibility of success or failure. And I have to tell you, I have a lot of experience in this area of arresting people, talking to people. I know what happens in that jail. I know what happens on the street. And I am a partner to figuring out a way to evaluate the individuals that will be more likely successful on the outside versus the inside. And I think I have a unique perspective of being able to bring that to the table to say, you know, there's a category of individuals, can't put a name on that category, that don't need to be in our facility for a variety of reasons. One, it upsets maybe their medical treatment and their medications that they're getting, and that transition back is another part of the issue. So yes, I'm a partner with you, but I will draw the line at some point when I think dangerous offenders are being released from jail, whether they're wealthy or non-wealthy, because you know, my life has been around how do you keep the community safe? Now, here's the question that we all have to answer. Is keeping the community safe, and this is I guess it's really the issue that Mary Morarity is raising, we all have to debate this question, is that do you keep the community safer by rehabilitating someone quickly that's in jail or a juvenile that's jail? Or do you keep the community safer by incarcerating that person? There's both, all right? Both have a role in our justice system. And so that's, on our side of the equation, we are constantly balancing the role of incarceration versus the role of release and rehabilitation. So obviously this is a 3-hour discussion if you wanted to get into it. But rest assured, we believe there are some people in jail that don't need to be there, and we would support a bail reform system to help them be released.
I appreciate that. There is a bail reform, again, meeting this evening at the Wilder Foundation from 6 to 8. Let me just say that, not going to be a rebuttal or anything, but I appreciate your experience and expertise about how you see system and know that you've been doing this for a very long time, but we've worked really hard to create a tool that will help us with that process so that biases won't show up and people are making decisions based on, you know, certain other factors.
Fair enough.
So I appreciate the partnership and having you being a part of this, because, you know, we can't do what we do without the support of the ADC, quite
Well,
frankly.
and just for the record, long before you even arrived here, we had offered to expedite an internal bail reform and make decisions about releasing people if the courts were to give us that authority. And it's better to.
A long time coming, right?
Yeah,
So,
it's better to be a team package, but sometimes you realize how many committee meetings there have been on this, right?
Last 5 years, so at least.
Too many.
All right, we're done with the discussion. How's
Okay.
that? We will continue the discussion. We have an RBA coming in next Tuesday. I think the board is pretty much well informed. A couple of issues that, as you stated, that are in the works, and we'll be looking into that, and we'll have further discussion.
Mr. Chair, you're okay if I'm not here next Tuesday?
That's fine. Thank you very much for your patience.
1:30.
We're adjourned, 1:30 downstairs.
Don't forget your card.